Perfect. Well, thank you very much again, Mr. Wayne. That's a pleasure just to have the chance to speak a little bit. So I guess I just want to start by asking you if you can share a little bit about the group and the ensemble that you're going to be presenting today, and just like the history and main mission of the Black Jazz Arts Collective, please.
Sure. So for these two concerts here in Mexico, I brought with me Black Art Jazz Collective. Mm-hmm. The group started in 2013. Mm-hmm. I called two of my closest friends, drummer Jonathan Blake and Jeremy Pelt, mm-hmm. with the idea of putting a group together to kind of celebrate the African American origins of mm-hmm. jazz, mm-hmm. And to kind of just through pool our resources, our business resources mm-hmm. and our musical resources and minds together to create some new music to celebrate Black culture in a positive way, mm-hmm. and just enjoy who we are and enjoy the music that we love. Mm-hmm. And so we started that in 2013, mm-hmm. Of course in 2023 we celebrated a 10th anniversary, and that's our latest album, Truth to Power. Yeah. In some ways the idea of the band is kind of mirrored after a group like Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers, or maybe Woody Shaw's groups, in that we rotate members, or mm-hmm. There might be some members for a certain amount of years, and then we'll invite new younger members into the group. So the first group had Jonathan Blake. Mm-hmm. Actually, the original bass player was Dwayne Burno, but then it became Vicente Archer and Xavier Davis as the rhythm section, mm-hmm. With myself, Jeremy Pelt, and James Burton mm-hmm. as the front line. Now the group has shifted for the last few albums, and we have Mark Whitfield Jr. Mm-hmm. on the drums. Ugonna Okegwo is joining us this time on bass. Victor Gould, a wonderful pianist and composer, is on piano. Josh Evans, who is known for his work lately with Christian McBride's New John group, and myself and James Burton. So so that's what's happening right now. Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. And in your opinion, what is Black American music? If you can perhaps share if there is a musical theme that you want to share, but also ideologically speaking, just for yourself, how would you put it? Honestly, my definition of jazz, as it were, mm-hmm. really comes from my teacher, my mentor, Jackie McLean. Mm-hmm. And he called jazz America's classical music, and almost in some ways one of America's indigenous musics, mm-hmm. Born out of the Black American experience. I mean, mm-hmm. Jazz is a combination of what the enslaved Africans brought here mm-hmm. to the United States, and a combination of the European and a variety of traditions that were in New Orleans at the time. Mm-hmm. So jazz, in many ways, is a synchronization of all of these different cultures coming together, mm-hmm. but really born out of that African American experience. In a lot of ways, jazz kind of tells the story of mm-hmm. Black culture through the eyes of America. Mm-hmm. It's almost a soundtrack of Black American culture. So, I think we're lucky, and it's beautiful that jazz is celebrated over the world, and now has become, in many ways has become, every culture has embraced jazz and has their own version of it. But I think it's important to appreciate and respect the origins of the music, that's all.
So I'm just curious about, hearing from yourself, what do you think is the current space, interest, and perhaps popularity between the general public in the United States for the jazz music, and especially understanding jazz as more like the swing and the tradition of this music?
Well, I think year to year it fluctuates, or rather, I think maybe even generation to generation it fluctuates. In jazz's prime, during let's say the Harlem Renaissance, and even during the early parts of the Civil Rights movement, jazz was the popular music. It was celebrated in that way, and it was on the television, which is an important outlet for spreading the word about anything. So, and that shifted with rock and roll and with R&B and blues and such. Now we're in a time where, in some ways, I feel like it's shifting back due to a variety of reasons. I mean, I think jazz is becoming more popular in a way because of its appeal globally. So it's in some ways it can be thought of as a world music because it can be easily combined with musics from all over the world. So that in a way helps the music. Also, I think with a lot of the younger jazz musicians being very much entrenched in the hip hop tradition.
Okay.
I think that's another reason why jazz, in some ways, is starting to become more popular. And then again, back to television. I mean, with talk shows and things like this, the more that jazz ends up being popularized for whatever reason, even though sometimes it can maybe be more of a characterization of what jazz is, not necessarily that authentic. You know, if it's getting shown and played on TV and dramatized in some way, it becomes more popular. So in some ways, I feel like it's becoming more popular again, for better or for worse. Even if you look at someone like Jean-Baptiste, who did a great, who did the great, film working with
the Soul movie,
well, so that did a great, great service to the music in some ways. You know? So things like that are going to help the music come back to popularity. So it just fluctuates. In my business, I try not to really focus on that too much because, like I said before, once I'm traveling and once I'm in front of an audience, I know that they love the music. Whether it's on the television or whether it's getting awards or not.
For yourself, like how often do you tour, like, or like, let's say, I know that you're of course a more established jazz musician, but for maybe more for like the average jazz musician, is there a way for them to like make a living out of jazz in a local setting, or is it like do typically travel? You need to travel internationally to fully make a living out of jazz music?
I think it depends on the artist. I mean, I'm lucky so that I can travel internationally. People know who I am internationally, so that I can travel around the world. Some musicians who are really great don't necessarily have that fortune, so they might just work in their local city or towns or travel locally. I think that's fine. I think you can make a living. I think it just depends on the cost of living in whatever city you are.
Surely.
New York City is a very high cost of living. So if you're going to be a musician in New York City and not tour, it's going to be hard. You can do it, but New York is expensive. London is expensive. Paris is expensive. These big cities. So.
Even though it might, like, it is the mecca for that music, like, still is gonna be like, I know you're not originally from there, so it's always an investment to even decide to go and be part of that scene, fully. Great. So, really, I also wanted to ask you a little bit about, for instance. Like, I know that you have participated a lot educationally on jazz programs, and like you come from a jazz program as well. And wanted to ask you, like, jazz programs in general, whether it will be like to learn music or just in a sense of music appreciation for the general audience. Do you think like programs in the United States have changed significantly, like the jazz programs from perhaps like when you were started to today, and like, do you think like, what's sort of like the accessibility for those type of programs in, let's say, a private school setting against like public settings, for instance?
Are you talking at the collegiate level or lower than that.
Collision, will it be like
universities, or are you talking about?
Okay,
talking about younger than that?
Well, I was referring younger than that, but I guess like maybe I don't know like what is more popular or like what is like accustomed for people to start. I always think about it as an universal level, but if that's something that's being taught out like for people younger, that will be like interesting for me as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the city, and unfortunately, it depends on kind of socioeconomic status.
Surely.
If people have money.
Yeah.
You know, when you're in a city or in a town wherein those communities are wealthy or have enough money for schools to invest in a music program or an arts program, then you're going to have some great things. And I think, you know, there are a variety of ways to teach music and to teach art.
Yeah.
So it's not really about how, it's just, in a way, it's about having the resources, because people have all different kinds of ideas that are great.
Yeah.
It's just about having the resources to do so. So and it's a combination of having the resources and also having people valuing art and music. And you have to have those two things. And sometimes you have people that have the resources that don't value it, some people that value it and don't have the resources. So it really just depends. I mean, but the good news is there are a lot of amazing musicians and a lot of great musicians who are great teachers. So it's not really about there being a lack of educators or a lack of ways to teach. It's just it just means, I guess.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting because like I was gonna ask you, like it's often that I hear like jazz musicians like, you know, being very open to give back educationally speaking to schools or communities, but I was wondering like your take on perhaps do you think like at a macro level, like more institutionalized education, is there something that could be done in your opinion to preserve and celebrate this music and perhaps continue to make it present in communities that perhaps don't have as much access as others?
I'm not really sure. I mean, I think, like I said, it just has to be valued. And I think it has to be understood, and I think thought of more as a national treasure. Yeah. I don't think that we think of, and like you were saying with Mexican music, or even if you think of other cultures, you know, even if you think of some maybe Asian cultures, you know, I feel like their music is more celebrated as cultural music that's interwoven into their society. Yeah. Even if they don't go clubbing listening to it, it's still a part of they know what it is because they're proud of it because that's a part of their nationality. And I don't think that jazz music is thought of in that way. In general by, you know, the general public and also even the whatever administration or whatever it has, not just this one, all of them. I don't think it's really thought of as like the national treasure, the national music. And I think until that happens, you know, it's not going to be a priority to make sure that the music is accessible to everybody. Yeah, that makes sense because even like, sorry, did I cut you off? No. Even like for instance, as I was talking about mariachi music, that's a human patrimony certified like music, like for Mexico, like it's part of like it has that value, and it, like internationally and locally speaking. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think jazz music has that you know, that label. Like it is just a label, but at the same time, like for a genre that is really like has birthed like so many other genres and is really like a foundation, let's say, for a lot of the music of the 20th and 21st century. Like it just seems like a little bit weird for me that will be the case, and I would, you know, was just curious to hear like. Well, I mean, I hate to go there, but unfortunately, that happens with things that are from the Black community. Yeah. I mean, I hate to say it that way, but that's just my experience and what I see in front of me. I mean, when there are things that are created by Black people, generally they get appropriated, and then they get pushed down, so not to give too much credit, and not celebrated so much. So it's unfortunate that that seems to happen.
Anyways, going back to what we were previously speaking about, and going back to the programs, Is there have you seen like any sort of like generational gap on younger people to approach and learn this music and appreciate this music? Do you think it's been a constant fluent thing, or is it or even improving in some ways?
I think it's improving because of in a way, people are more accessible. The music is more accessible because of the internet.
Yeah.
You know, because of like things like YouTube and even whatever social media platform you want to say, TikTok, Instagram, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think it's very easy to see. You can put in John Coltrane, you can put in Miles Davis, you can put in these things, and you can see these things in front of your face, you know, at a moment's notice.
Yeah.
And that's new. You know, that's, or at least for me, for my generation, that's new. And I think, you know, of course, in a variety of ways, that can be a disservice in how the music is presented. But I think in general, I think it's great. And I think when there are young musicians who play, who have actually spent the time to do a little bit of investigation, I think they're at a high level to a certain degree. You know, of course, there's a lot of things that they might be missing, like maturity or like, you know, a deeper understanding. But as far as, you know, technique and like, you know, just understanding certain basic things, I think there are more younger people that are at a good level because of the internet, I think.
Okay. And have, you know, all of these things that we have talked about, like both educationally and like through the internet, like this access to this music, how do you think Black American music has either benefited or being affected maybe by these new ways of consumption?
I mean, I don't know. That's a difficult thing to answer, and I might feel different. It might feel different depending on the day you ask me. But I mean, I think it's generally good when Black culture is celebrated and made widely accessible. Yeah. Because people will enjoy it and respect it and appreciate it. It's just a lot of ways. It just depends on how it's presented. You know, and you know, it can be presented in a variety of different ways for a variety of different reasons. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. What is one thing that you think perhaps like the general public can do to continue keeping this music, you know, being celebrated and in the stage that it deserves to be at?
I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. What I do know is that live music is very infectious. Yeah. You know, so I think people have to make sure that they go out and see live music and bring other people to experience live music, because, you know, when you over-explain things and when you talk about things all the time, you know, that doesn't do it. Yeah. You know, you can explain anything, it just doesn't do it. Yeah. But when you're in front of it and you feel the energy and you see it happening in front of you, it's a completely different thing. It is, yeah. You know, so I think it's important to just, you know, for example, if you want to convince someone to support the music, or you want to convince someone to like the music, instead of lecturing them about the history and that they're supposed to like it, you just take them to a concert and let them hear good music. Yeah. And they're gonna have questions. Yeah. And they're gonna fall in love with it, I think. Yeah. You know, yeah. I think you know, live art at a high level is infectious. Yeah, and it speaks for itself. Like often coming from a place of respect and admiration to the music, but you know, with the history of Black American music being, of course, so connected, as you said, to the Black American experience and social justice and different movements for equality. What do you think, you know, in your opinion, of course, what is like the ideological state, perhaps, of jazz music in contemporary society today? Like, what do you think jazz, if it has, like, not saying that it has to, but if it has something to say, is it something that is being said right now? Like, what is the space, perhaps, on the more of like the political discourse of music in the United States right now? That's a difficult question, because I mean, I don't think that we can assume that everyone who plays jazz is on the same, has the same political ideology. Yeah. I don't think that's true. And I think it might have been more true in certain times, but I don't think it's as true now. Yeah, makes sense. So I think what jazz still continues to stand for is just freedom of expression, and freedom of identity.
Yeah.
I think that's probably global or and crosses everybody's crosses all the spectrums of people's beliefs. But in a way, it's sad to say that I don't think there's one ideology. Maybe it's not sad. Maybe that's what it's supposed to be. I don't know. But
Yeah. No, thank you very much. Excellent. I think these were all the questions that I had prepared for today. So I really appreciate again the time, Mr. Wayne. It was a pleasure to have the chance to speak. Thanks a lot.